Welcome, everyone. My name is Jeremy Roden, and this is the first episode of a podcast series that I've started called Stories from Halfway Conversations of Impact, Leadership, and Legacy. What a great opportunity to host our first guest tonight, somebody I've known for 30 plus years, my former teacher in high school, now an award winning speech and strength coach. And I think a lot of the themes you're going to hear tonight from his journey, his stories, will really resonate with you. Fursey Gotuaco, I am so honored to have you here tonight, your morning. Thank you for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your initial journey into what you were doing, how we met, and then we'll get to what you're doing today.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's a privilege being here. You and I first started many years ago as in a theater program in Little Richland High School, North Richland Hills, Texas. I was your theater teacher, and it was so awesome to have that opportunity as a teacher to work with such incredible, talented young people like yourself. And after teaching theater, then I moved into teaching speech and even into programs where I'm helping kids get into college. But everywhere along the way, I get a chance to touch lives of amazing, amazing people. And it truly honors me and everything that I think the world is about, to be able to stay on that journey with people and keep walking that path with you.
Well, tell me about, what were your early influences? Why did you get into teaching? I know you're a graduate of the University of Texas at Austin, theater. You stayed at Richland for a number of years. You impacted a tremendous amount of people. You helped foster a very special community that anybody that knows you has memories from that time period. But what were some of your early influences, early career, and why you chose that path?
As a kid growing up in my family, my mother was always someone we had to do chores. My
Same.
family, we had to do chores, right? And my mother didn't just she wouldn't just say, "Okay, do this." She would kind of show me how to do it and then let me do it, and then it I grew a sense of understanding who I was in the whole role, really. And it gave me a great sense of self empowerment. And I think I always credit my mother with giving me the teaching style that I had. And that was then grown at UT Austin in the drama department, where I was really lucky enough to be part of a community.
Mhm.
Yeah, it wasn't a school of 48,000, it was a school of 400, the department, and then a smaller, tighter knit group of 10 people who were trying to study how to not just do theater, but teach theater,
Mhm.
like how to use theater as that organic mechanism that grows people. Because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
that's what it's about, Jeremy. That's
Yeah, absolutely. Well, can you talk a little bit about that? Yeah, no, I think you're hitting it right on the head because, one of the things that I love to bring up, and I've talked about it years, especially my graduate students now. I refer to all my graduate students as teammates. I was like, and don't call me professor, call me coach. I'm helping guide you. I'm helping draw out your ideas. You all are professionals. You have this expertise. But during that time when you were trying to figure out how to teach theater, to me, that's at the root of education versus teaching, because education to draw out, right? To draw out those ideas and then to put forth, versus teaching to put in. So I've always talked about, if I meet somebody new, I want to learn about what's their baseline, where are they right now, what do I see in them. Maybe let's tap into stuff they haven't discovered yet, or maybe they've just scratched the surface. What can I do to kind of coach them along the way to kind of draw out their full potential? But do you see the juxtaposition between those two and what you were trying to do at UT and then what you eventually brought to Richland?
I think you hit the nail on the head. The leading out versus the putting in. That's a quote. That's an incredibly famous quote that goes back to the Greeks, but made famous in England later on. That the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a lamp to be lit.
Hmm.
Plutarch,
Yeah,
Plutarch's
absolutely.
favorite, and and that kind of lamp lighter model. It's a growth. It's about growth from, let me give you knowledge
Hmm.
because you're not enough, right? That's the premise. The premise of me putting knowledge into you is that it's not enough. You have a deficit.
Hmm.
And who can keep growing thinking that they have a deficit? But instead, it's like,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. I see greatness in you.
Yeah.
Let's bring it out of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, as a student, every single day when I show up to class, somebody believes in me. Every single day, somebody believes in me, and we're going to keep finding what it is inside of me that I want to pull out.
Yeah.
Everybody can grow from that. And I think that's even more important today. I'm not in the classroom anymore, but that's even more important today when, man, Jeremy, we don't need to give kids knowledge. It's all right there,
That's right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's in their
Easy.
device.
Yeah.
They don't need me to give them knowledge. They don't need you to give them your kids, your family. They don't need you to give knowledge. They just need an opportunity.
Yeah, and, that's probably one of my greatest struggles, and I want to get to some of the lessons learned along the way in your early career. But being a parent, I've got two boys, 15, 16, high school, and then my daughter is in her last year at college at Arkansas, studying criminology. Went to go in the Secret Service or FBI. Very very smart. Never dreamed that she was going to go that route, but she's swimming in that lane, and that's what she's doing. If I try to teach them something, I feel like they don't have the patience because they can go on YouTube and figure something out. The things that I've been struggling with, I think lately is, okay, how can I inspire them or just plant a seed and then walk away? And then maybe they come back either the next day or a week later and go, hey, Dad, what about this? One of my very favorite podcast hosts is Mel Robbins, and I just saw something recently, I think it's a couple of days ago. And she talks about, I'm going to totally get this wrong, but when your kid is communicating with you, you know, you need to ask them, do you want me to respond or you want me to listen? I'm paraphrasing her podcast, but it's such an important lesson to learn because many times if my kids or maybe somebody in the corporate world, or maybe somebody I'm teaching, we're very quick to act to fix this. I'm going to teach you this, and then you're no longer going to have that problem. And that's just not the case, especially with a teenager where they do want you to listen. And I think early on when you were teaching us in that theater environment, you put us in situations where one, you were drawing out our talents and putting us in situations where we were leading other people for the first time in our lives. And you were not always giving us the answers, right?
I did that because I didn't know the answer, Jeremy.
That's good. Well, we absolutely respected that. And we knew when to not talk to you, right? We knew those days when to stay in the other room, let G do his thing, and it made us better. What lessons early career, whether it's a failure or a win, can you talk about that really started to build the foundation to when you knew that you were impacting others a little further along in your career, whether it was education or moving into speech coaching, strength coaching, all of that, the things that I see you do all over the world, these workshops that you host. What are some of those lessons that you carry with you today, whether it's a failure or, some of the wins along the way?
I think the most important lesson I ever learned, it's so easy in education to think about the content, and it's not about the content, it's about the people. And in theater, when you're always trying to work towards opening night, it's so easy to think about the end result rather than the journey and the process. And I think the most important lesson I learned through failure was they don't care. This is a quote from Teddy Roosevelt. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Mm,
And I had to learn that the hard way. I had to
yeah,
learn that from some of the kids who didn't have it quite as easy. And because I was a young teacher and I was working and I was trying, but I kind of took some wrong paths and I didn't realize that process. Yeah, the seed is planted, but I kind of wanted the tree to grow a little faster. And it's
yeah.
like, you're not going to get it to grow faster by Jeremy, you can't get a young tree to grow faster by pulling it up. You're going to end
True,
up
true.
pulling it out of its roots.
That's right.
And and I had to just sit back, relax, and just keep whispering in its ear. You're going to
Mhm.
be great. You're going to be great. You're going to be great. Some of those earlier students, they had to tell me that.
Yeah,
And that was humbling. That was humbling, Jeremy. To
yeah,
just I remember we were all in a circle and the kids just sort of had a powwow with me and they were like, we need you to know this, Mr. G, but
yeah.
we're with you, Mr. G.
One of the best jobs I ever had. I was a program director and full-time faculty for a college here in DFW, Dallas Fort Worth. Those of you not from Texas, called Richland College. And I was there for about 5 years or so, and I was hired to grow an interactive simulation and game technology program from the ground up. Gaming's huge, and obviously my background in digital media, having worked in film, it was an incredible opportunity to one build something new. But I learned so many things along the way, and I'd spent time in the high school classroom before. When I left the film industry and in digital media full time, and really fell into education by accident because I had a former teacher ask me, "Hey, can you come and help teach students? We have a NASA sponsored robotics competition. Can you come teach the technologies used in film to the teachers? Then we can then turn and make a program at the high school level." And it was very incredibly special because one, I learned, that I love teaching, very quickly. And my family comes from a line of teachers and administrators on my mom's side. But when I got to Richland, I realized very quickly the level of responsibility that I had. One, building the program, promoting the program, promoting the brand. I mean, we built everything from the ground up. And when I saw the passion that the students cared about this program and the acceleration of enrollment when that passion grew was so special to watch. And I made a decision one day, and I'll probably have some of them on this podcast series. There's several people that come to mind immediately. And I said, you know what? I'm going to empower these college students to help build this program through them. They need to get involved. They need to get involved with every aspect of this program. And it's what made it successful. And it still exists today. But the lessons I learned along the way is because I saw that they cared about it. And I'd say, okay, why does this individual care about this? Okay, I need to understand where they're coming from. And and there were days where I'd make mistakes, and I'd have some of my most trusted students say, hey, we can't do this way because of that, or maybe it's a technology thing, and it helped me steer my decision making. And I think the lessons early career, and I was in my early 30s, in that particular role, I look at those lessons, and even some of my worst days were the best lessons. When you empower others to grow something special, it's a vulnerability that maybe some aren't comfortable with. They want to control everything and do it their way. But to me, the best aspect of that program was of their involvement. I reached out to you, and all of a sudden, I see this amazing content that you're creating through these workshops of being a speech coach and a Toastmasters, a competitor, all of that. Can you kind of give us an introduction into that? And then let's make the connection with that impact that you made as a teacher, as an educator, and what inspired you to make that change.
I wanted a bigger classroom. That's what it kind of boils down to, As a theater teacher, I get a chance to work with those amazing kids in that one program.
Hmm.
And then I transferred to a different program where now I'm helping the entire group, the entire school move into ways that they could go into college. And now as a speaker, I'm helping adults. I'm helping people who are trying to get to that next level of their job. I'm trying to move into leadership. I'm trying to just put it bluntly, I'm trying to get a bigger paycheck to put food on the table, and now I get to help them do that. If I can give them skills, if I can give them that same sense of confidence
Hmm.
so that they can go for a managerial position, a leadership position where they can put their family in a better place, and it's immediate. It's incredibly gratifying to be able to impact somebody's life and see it that soon. And and I think it's you got to learn how to grow, right? I could have
Yeah.
stayed in the classroom, but I had to do the same thing that I was asking students to do. You got to grow. You got to try new things,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
redefine yourself in that.
Yeah, and I think it's also important, and I tell my kids this because, and I think it's a very hard lesson. I didn't really fully believe it until I was, later in my career. I've done quite a bit. I had to adapt after my father got sick and passed away when I was in my early 20s. I didn't get a dad to call and say, "Hey, how do I deal with this situation?" Or in my early 20s, I had to figure things out, and there was a good stint of years there that I needed him. I still need him today, And I think about him every day. What would he tell me in this situation? Right. And navigating my career from film to education to the corporate world. I've worked in educational technology. I now work in a digital media related role for a corporate organization, but using a lot of the same skills, I learned over the years. But none of those jobs define who I am. And I try to teach my kids like one job's not going to define you. You're going to be using every tool at your disposal for various situations as you go through the journey that is life. And along the way, you're going to meet new people and you're going to use certain skills with those individuals. And then you're going to use certain skills with different individuals. And you're going to pay attention to the opportunities along the way. And how are you going to impact that particular person or that situation? But can you talk about the juxtaposition between a student, maybe a younger student, whether it's a high school or early college, or maybe a grad student, the idea of trust. And then with your speech coaching now, you deal with people that are seasoned veteran professionals. Can you talk about the differentiation there and how that's different? Is it different? You know your skill set, but when you have an adult, do you feel like you have to work a little bit harder to believe, like, I do need to pay attention to what first he's actually telling me here? Or is there pride there where they're like, I'm a professional. Why do I need to listen to this individual? Do you ever deal with some of those dynamics?
There are all different kinds of individuals who walk into our lives, and every student is different and every adult is different. But one thing I have learned is that when I've gotten so accustomed to working with students who needed me to do more early on, I needed to do more to help them understand they could do this and to support them
Mhm.
further. Whereas with adults, I can kind of throw them into the wind a little bit sooner and they're kind of under their own power. Then it's like, and Jeremy, I don't know if you had this experience with your sons and daughters, but at some point they don't want to hold your hand when they cross the street,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a
right?
hard day.
We're working with kids in middle school and high school.
Yeah.
I might hold their hand walking
Yeah.
across the street. As
The
adults, they're
hugs
like,
used to be
I don't
different.
hold your hand
Yeah.
walking
The
across the
the
street.
hugs were very different. The hand
Yeah.
holding. Now it's, to get a hug out of my 15-year-old, it's kind of like a half foot. It's like, what is that? This is how we hug,
So
right?
now I don't have to, if I'm trying to get an adult across the street, I don't need to come to their side of the street and hold their hand walking across the street. I can just stand on the other side of the traffic light and go, come on over. It's this way. It's this way. Come on. Oh, watch that car. It's this way.
Yeah.
and they'll get there and they want to do it on their own.
Or when you go into one of your workshops, let's talk about the impact you're having as a speech coach. When you meet somebody new or a group of people that's new, how long does it take them to really start paying attention to what you actually saying? I've seen your hooks over the years and on social media, and you've been a guest speaker in my class, and those hooks are like, I'm going to give you goosebumps. But in a live setting, new people, whether it's 10 people or if it's 30 people, what's that like with what you're doing now compared to maybe how you captivated students back in as a teacher?
You got about 15 seconds. You got 10 or 15 seconds before all of a sudden it's like, hello. People's attention spans are getting sorry, I thought I saw a shiny object. People's attention spans get shorter and shorter,
Yeah.
and you have to give them, you got to cut straight to it. You got to, one thing that working with students has taught me, they can smell BS. They can
Yes.
smell it when it's
Yeah.
off. And
Never
you've
try to
got,
pretend. Never
yeah,
try to
you
pretend
can,
that you know everything or yeah, yeah. It's that's
I've
silly.
learned I'll just say, okay, here's all my issues here, when the kids, laugh at me, Mr. G, you're bald. I go, I know. And shiny too. What are you going to say? No, I'm not bald. What yeah, it is. Watch the glare,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you got to keep it real. And I think even for adults, you got to let them know we're going to get real here.
Yeah.
But it's going to be all about you. They have to know it's all about you. I'm doing everything to help you grow, and it's
Mhm.
not about me. And I think when you do that, then trust is built. But it's going to have to be fast. It's going to have to be quick. It's going to have to be early. And then you've got to keep growing that. You got to keep feeding that along the way and
Yeah.
realize, and you've got to let them know they're on a journey. You talked about halfway, right? You're
Mhm.
on a road trip. Picture yourself on a road trip and you're trying to get to the end and you think, well, I'm getting closer and closer to my destination. But that's because we see things on a timeline. We see things in one or two dimensions. How about the emotional journey you're on?
Yeah.
And what if you got off that particular road? And what if you got out of your car?
And it's scary.
Yeah. And what hey, let's get a motorcycle. Let's get an on off road motorcycle and let's go through the mountain on two wheels and let's see what the rest of this journey is going to look like.
Mhm.
We're only halfway. So what if we've done it this way in the past? Man, what's that future going to look like? It's
Yeah.
going to be amazing.
In my graduate class, there's one project. It starts on day one and it ends the last week, of the course. You've experienced that and seen those live, and you've guided a lot of those students, and they've reached out to you. And sometimes along the way, people have an aha moment early on, right? They go, okay, no, I know exactly what I'm going to work on. And I want it to be pragmatic. I want it to impact their career and their journey. How is this project going to help me get better at this part of my career, or maybe discover a new career? And some people have an aha moment early on and know what I'm going to do, and they're dialed in and they're playing, right? There are others that takes 2 or 3 weeks for that aha moment to hit. And one of the things that I explained early on is like, look, you can reach out to me anytime, whether it's through text, email. I'd rather have a phone conversation or a Zoom call, or a Teams call, and work through this issue with you, because you're trying something new versus me sending you a quick one liner in an email and you wondering whether or not I want to dive deeper into these things, and the trust that is built with those dynamics when they realize, oh my gosh, he's picking up the phone and we're having a 30-minute conversation about my project. And at the end of that, it's clicked. I said, yes, you're trying something new. That's what I want to see. I don't want you to turn in homework just to check a box. I want you to go through this process. It's like on my woodworking projects, whether I'm building a guitar or something else. You know my background and always working on a project. There is a point where that project has to sit. When I get frustrated, it has to sit, and I've got to walk past it 25 times, still frustrated, but I'm thinking about how to solve that particular issue, right? And I think a lot of the times in our career, there are moments where that moment has to sit, and we have to go. You've heard like, go do something else. Go clear your mind. Whatever it is. My wife says a lot. When I'm working on a project, she's like, go take a walk, or what? Maybe I'm arguing with my teenager. Go do something different. Those are moments that have to sit, because then I find that some of my best ideas come when I'm not even in front of the project, or I'm not even in front of the person. And it's just the dynamics in helping people that really fires me up as an individual. And you as a teacher and a speech coach, it's like a literacy teacher seeing a child learn to read their first sentence. That empowerment and that just sense of accomplishment. And I love seeing that when ideas just click. And I've seen hundreds of people over the years, have those moments. And I'm so happy for them. And it's really one of the things that drives me to be involved in education, even today.
Jeremy, one of the things that you're touching on is about the phrase today is being all in. Right.
Mhm.
That's the poker phrase that we use today. We're all in. And what you've discussed here when you talk about call me, when you're telling your students call me, and let's that you're open to them and you want to be present for them. And it's about commitment. There's an old story about a pig and a chicken. And the pig and the chicken are traveling together. And they wake up one morning and the chicken says, let's go get some breakfast. And the pig says, hey, yeah, let's go get some breakfast. And the chicken then goes, look at that place. Let's go in there. And the pig looks at the restaurant name and he goes, we can't go in there. Look at the name, Ham and Eggs. And the chicken's like, what's wrong? I'm giving something too. And the pig says, well, yeah, for you, it's just giving. For me, it's total commitment.
Mhm.
And part of what we have to understand is people can get knowledge anywhere. They can go to YouTube and get anything they want.
Mhm.
What they can't get is community. What they can't get is mentoring. And to do that right, it's our job as mentors, as teachers, to be committed. We
Yeah.
we have to be all in, and because people feel
Yeah.
it when you're not.
Yeah. And one of the things, and my students will tell you this, and some of my coworkers over the years, you'll hear me say, "We're all busy.
Yeah.
Look, we're all busy. We have to make time. We have to make time for people. We have to make that time and be purposeful with that time."
The hardest question I ever got in a job interview. The hardest question I ever got in a job interview, and I was just not ready. I mean, I do a fair amount of planning and preparation. I was not ready for this one. It was a panel. It was to be an assistant principal, and there was a principal in the interview, another assistant principal, a couple of teachers, a parent,
Mhm.
and a student. And if there's just one individual, it's easy. This question is easy if there's one person there. But if it's a panel, the question was, who's the most important person on campus? And if it's just the principal, you say, well, the student's the most important. Or if it's, the teacher, that you say the teacher's the one's important.
Mhm.
But if it's a panel, then who are you going to insult? Because if I say it's the student, then the teacher gets upset. If I say
Mhm.
it's the teacher, then the parent gets upset. No matter what, you're going to upset somebody. And I got to tell you, Jeremy, you talk about a gift from God in a flash of light. When he said, who's the most important person? I said, the most important person is whoever I'm talking to in that moment.
Yeah.
Because if they don't feel that I'm giving them 110% of my focus and my attention, then all is lost anyway. You
Yeah.
just went
Yeah.
from 100 to 0, and there's no getting around it. They feel that you've shut them down and shut them out. So you have to give every person that full attention.
Tell us about what you're doing as far as these workshops and this content that you're driving on social media. What's some of the impact there that you feel like you're making? And then what type of legacy are you wanting that to kind of leave on people, having this new journey that you're on? I mean, you've been doing it a number of years now, obviously, but what's that impact like? What are some things that you feel like you're doing right?
I I don't know what I'm doing right, but I can tell you what it is that I want to do. And I can tell you what it is that I love seeing in others. And that is when I see that growth and sometimes redefining who they are. It's kind of like going up to a mature tree and saying, "Hey, listen, you've done a great job as being a shade tree. Have you ever thought about growing fruit?" Or to somebody who never thought of themselves as being able to do more and saying, you could provide branches for nests for birds. They're finding their voice,
Hmm.
right? Being a voice teacher, I know it's about finding your vocal voice. But boy, I tell you, when you let people find what's in their heart,
Hmm.
their real voice, you find you've got this lady, and she's a mother of three, and she's spent her whole career doing that, being a housewife and a house mother. And now all of a sudden she's found the voice to lead her community group.
Yeah.
She's redefining herself. She's finding her second half.
Hmm.
She's at the halfway point of her life, and she's trying to figure out what goes next and what else have I got to give. And that's incredibly rewarding. And that's part of what I'm able to do now. It was a joy to do it for kids, it's students like yourself. Now my challenge is, how do you do it with someone who's at the halfway point of their life
Yeah.
and is trying to figure out, is there more? I mean, they don't think there's more. They think they found their path and it's the only thing and there's nothing left, and they're kind of defeated by it.
We compare ourselves to others. In social media, I tell my students, excuse me, or I do tell my students this, especially when they go down this path. You can't compare yourself to those individuals.
Nope.
You cannot compare yourself to other people. You can't care what they think. If you think that you're a terrible, public speaker and you don't like to give a presentation in front of people, go out there and try. Forget about what they think. You're trying, right? And these kids these days, especially in high school, it's so easy to pick up the phone and compare themselves to somebody else, maybe driving a different car, choosing a different career, different college, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden, they let that define. It gets inside their head, and they can't get past that, and it just stifles that potential, right? But do you find that even when you're coaching people, that they're still comparing themselves to other people while they're trying to maybe try something new for the first time?
Not only that, they're comparing themselves to what they think it's supposed to be.
Mm,
Here's a challenge. Ask people if they were a tree, what would they look like? And have them draw it. And a lot of times you get that typical tree that goes up, and they don't realize if you go and find, I mean, I have a presentation about growing trees and how it's about mentoring ourselves. And there are all kinds of trees. There are trees that grow out of rocks.
hmm
Well, what's that a metaphor for? Right? The hard lives that some of us have led. You've talked about your own father
Yep.
and where he found his roots early on and where that tree could have grown. But he grew out of a rock. And then there are other trees that grow off the side of a mountain and then go up. There's a
hmm
picture of a famous tree. Jeremy, it's in a tunnel and it's growing upside down. It couldn't grow up, so it grew down and then out towards sunlight. Nature has a way of finding a way to succeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our job is to look people in the eye and say, now it's your turn to succeed.
Yeah.
Let me help you find a way.
There was this one moment in a college classroom, undergraduate students, and I loved working with the special needs students, students with
Mm.
disabilities. A lot of the technologies we would use, or maybe it was more of a formal art and design type class. Sometimes I feel like, well, oh, I can't do that. It's like, of course you can. Come join my class. I want you involved. You are a student just like anybody else. Like, come on in. I loved it. And there was this one particular moment where another instructor did not want them in their classroom. And so I called administration. I said, enroll the individual in my class. More than happy. And this particular individual was legally blind, had a translator in the class full time. And this particular class was a conceptual design type class, project based learning kind of thing. And one of the challenges that we did, we went outside and we started drawing one day. And while this particular individual was legally blind, he had glasses and he could still see. What I imagine in me talking with the interpreter was maybe looking through a house glass window when it's raining outside and the water is coming down the glass, and on the other side you see this blurred landscape. And that's how I tried to imagine what he was seeing. So we go outside and do this project, and we come back in, we hang up all of our stuff, and they saw his drawing, and it was exactly how I described it. It was like he was looking through a glass that had water running down it. You could see what was what. It was incredible. But it was such a learning moment for everybody else, because like you described, people drawing trees a different way. When they go outside and draw this bridge over this water and these tulips, everybody's was a little bit different. And it was interesting, the various details that people would draw. And some of these people never draw in their life, right? Which I love those. They're like, hold on for a second. Actually, you can draw. Like, get ready. You're in my class. Like, there's probably people watching this episode right now laughing at this particular lesson because of like, just hang on. So anyway,
Yeah.
my point is, I think that's really critical to understand the perspectives, but I do think that we compare ourselves too much. But take me down the most impactful things you've done over the last 12 months. Maybe some of these workshops. I've seen some of this stuff online, like I mentioned before, but some of these workshops that you feel where you're creating the most impact and creating people coming back to you and really seeking further advice.
Well, the most obvious one I think would be being able to speak at the World Championship of Public Speaking.
Mm,
And that's in front of almost 2,000 people. It's like 1,800 people.
wow.
Pretty good sized room. And I'm talking about my students. I'm talking about being able to speak to others so that they'll listen, and how important that is. And I say everybody thinks that the chair is facing them. Like I'm talking to you and the chair is facing me. Listen, some chairs aren't like that because the people we teach aren't like that. And the people in our lives are not like that.
Hmm.
And that's when I take the chair and I move it this way. And sometimes the chair is facing that way and you're talking behind them. And I take the chair, Jeremy, and I drop that chair on its side. Sometimes it's like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes the people we're talking to are on the ground and they can't get up. What are you gonna come on, Kat? And what are you gonna say to them? What are you gonna say to that person?
Yeah.
Because that person right there, that's not just somebody else's kid. That's your daughter.
Yep.
That's your son. That's the person sitting next to you, never gonna let you know that they're suffering.
Yeah.
And we gotta whisper in their ear. We gotta whisper in their ear something that's gonna say, like, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
You're just halfway there.
It's very touching because actually the sign behind me, halfway, my 16-year-old made that for me. And, he has been going through a health struggle, since the beginning of the year. And he is well on his way to getting 100% again. And he has demonstrated so much strength over the past 5, 6 months. And I'm in awe. But the strength in him has been so inspiring. But what I've tried to do is what you just described, little messages to show him that I care, that I need you. Yeah, your cat's
Yeah, he's
you're
pulling
good. My
everything.
border collie downstairs probably would run up here. So all good. It's the
He's
all
got
good. This is real
his leg and he's pulling everything out. Dude.
entertainment. Yeah, all good. I love it. But I would give him a piece of advice because I saw how much he was suffering. I mean, no 16-year-old should have to go through what he experienced. Is experiencing, right? And when he was building me that sign for this podcast, he's like, Dad, hey, can I do this? Man, go. Absolutely. You know, this is going to be special. Your grandfather will be very proud of you. But it was some motivation that he needed. He felt like he was a part of something. He's a carbon copy of me. He likes to build stuff with his hands. The stuff he comes up with is incredible. But just a little push out the door has given him a sense of accomplishment and that he can actually believe that he's overcoming, the challenges.
And you know what, Jeremy? When he sees this and he sees that sign, it's gonna just inflate his heart every single time. And now he's got a story, Jeremy.
Yeah.
And he doesn't realize it. When we're in the moment, we don't realize it. We don't realize this is a story. And when we're young, we don't realize the power of stories.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
stories are how people connect. I mean, 2,000 years ago, why is it? It's 2,000 years ago, things happened. And how do we know they happened? Because somebody told it in stories. Because
Yeah.
they didn't have a printing press, right?
Yeah.
They didn't have a printing press 2,000 years ago, but there's a story there. And
Yeah.
and now he's got a story.
I appreciate you mentioning that because I've reminded when they were like, "What's halfway, Dad?" I was like, "Look, that's where your grandfather grew up. This small town, small community is a community of incredible people, and they are hard workers. All the surrounding small towns in that part of Northwest Texas, farming community, ranching community, hard workers." I said, "That hard work exists in you. So halfway is a symbol. So for this podcast that I'm building, there's a lot packed into this." Right. And what you've been going through, you're demonstrating that resilience, that grit, and it's inspiring. If somebody can take away just, one bit, one little nugget, and it challenges them to do something tomorrow or be better tomorrow, then that's what I'm trying to do here. So any last words you'd like to leave us with? Tell us where we can find you on social media.
They can find me at FurseyGotuaco.com and then go from there. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram because I'm a man of a certain age. This is what I miss about being in the classroom. When you're in the classroom, you got instant group of people who can help you do technology. But I sure do hope that people give themselves a chance and people realize they're not done yet. wherever you are in your life, you're not done yet. And if you need help trying to figure out what's the next step, then yeah, give me a ring.
Absolutely. And well, I cannot thank you enough because you were one that helped inspire me to take this from a graduate classroom to the public setting. And there's so many themes that we could cover, but that connection that we are at a halfway point in our lives at every moment. Right? We can look back and dwell, stay in that pit, or we can take advantage of those pivot points and move forward. So I hope you all enjoyed the first episode. Like, follow me, do all of that, reach out. Love hearing from you. And Fursey, thank you so much for being here and just so grateful for your time and look forward to connecting again.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's been great. It's going to be a terrific show.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.